In the early 2000s, Nintendo was experimenting hard with marketing on the internet, making their own websites and activities to encourage you to buy more of their products. Club Nintendo is the most well known of these marketing attempts for sure. You'd buy their games to earn points, which you could then use to get like little Nintendo goodies. You could get exclusive games that weren't available to buy anywhere else, the Donkey Kong Country Returns soundtrack, or even unlock the Mewtwo character DLC in Smash 4 early. It was gas as hell. Everybody remembers Club Nintendo. Nobody will ever forget about this website. But there's a lot of things Nintendo has done that we did forget about. One of those things being Camp Hyrule. Now man, was this shit odd, but it was also really damn interesting. Camp Hyrule was a yearly virtual summer camp that you could visit by going to the Camp Hyrule website. When you'd go to the website, you'd enter this kind of virtual hub that's full of lots of different Nintendo references. This hub had a bunch of locations themed around Nintendo's upcoming releases for the time. While in the camp, you could chat with other Nintendo fans from across the globe and even the Nintendo of America staff, like the real ones. And when you weren't socializing with the other campers, you could spend your time playing these really fun Camp Hyrule Flash games. And these were absolute fire. The library here was incredible. Donkey Kong, 1080 Avalanche, look at this shit, man. What the fuck? As you can kinda get by now, Camp Hyrule was kinda like the 2002 Xbox Game Pass. But what was really cool about these games is that there was kind of like an actual incentive to play them. You see, when you first arrived at camp, you were randomly given a cabin number. You'd share this cabin with all the other people who randomly got the same cabin number as you, right? And you guys would kinda work together to get high scores on these minigames so your cabin could get points. The cabin with the most points by the end of camp would get prizes from Nintendo. So there was kind of an actual element of competition between the cabins. But if you sucked ass at all the minigames like me, there were still other ways to get points for your cabin. The camp runners would also host Photoshop competitions of all things. They'd give the camp an image and tell everyone to mess with it and make it look dumb as hell or whatever. Then they'd pick an image to be the winner, and whoever made it would earn points for their cabin. There were other random contests they'd hold too, like sometimes they'd do trivia nights, or sometimes you'd have to find something secret hidden on the map. Just random stuff like that, right? Just different competitions to give everyone a chance to score some points. Camp Hyrule would end up lasting for 11 years, surprisingly, 1995 all the way to 2006, which is a pretty long time. It's super cool. Nintendo fans in this time period just spent a couple days together every single summer, experiencing like the little charm of this website. I'm gonna take you through every year documented online, show you the games they had, and tell you what it really was like being at Camp Hyrule. Let's start from the very beginning. Before Camp Hyrule was even a thing, Nintendo had these 24/7 chat rooms online. Sometimes Nintendo of America staff would show up and you'd be able to talk to them. Nintendo thought it would be cool to host a community event where their staff could talk to fans all day, which is how Camp Hyrule was born. So on August 11th, 1995, Camp Hyrule was hosted on AOL. It was described as this really fun event where you could talk to Nintendo staff 24/7 as well as play fun games with them inside chat rooms. But besides that, there really wasn't else much to do. There were no actual Flash games or anything, it was kind of bare bones. And to be honest, there's little to nothing about this shit online, dude. The history of what happened in these years are like fucked. And that's obviously a problem, so I decided to try and contact someone who actually went to these years of Camp Hyrule, which is how I met this guy. Now this guy is our GOAT. This is Justin. He attended every single Camp Hyrule year from 1995 all the way until 2006. So I relied on him to help fill in the gaps we had. According to him, you'd actually have to sign up to attend Camp Hyrule. And there apparently was a cap of 100 people for the first 2 years. And there was no hub, no map, no nothing in the first Camp Hyrule. It was strictly just chat rooms. But the second year apparently did have a map. I just don't have a picture of it, but it was apparently kinda shitty anyway. He remembers hearing some story that Nintendo hired some dude to make the map, but the guy they hired never actually made it, and then told them last second that he wouldn't be able to make it. So at the last minute, Nintendo like freaked out and they made the map on their own, and it was super rushed and kind of bad. But that's honestly kinda it. That's all I got for those first 2 years already. It was a long time ago, so it's not really surprising there's little to no information on it. But that changes with 1997. This was the first year Nintendo switched off of AOL, instead deciding to host the event on their own website, Nintendo.com. And this is where the cabins were fully introduced and where Camp Hyrule starts becoming more and more interactive. Every cabin would be assigned a different Nintendo employee. This employee was your new best friend for your entire stay at camp. They were known as the camp counselors. You'd make friends with them, play dumbass games with them. They'd be kind of like a guiding figure in your Camp Hyrule experience, which I think is honestly a really cool idea. Nintendo tried to get really close with their fans during this time, like really close. This amount of communication between company and consumer is like fucking unheard of today. This is also the first year where I actually have a picture of the map, which is pretty cool. I had to search in the depths for this one, but yeah, this was old ass Camp Hyrule. You could move your mouse around and click on these different buildings to be taken to the different parts of the camp, right? One example for this year was Lake Webaconda. This was a little place you could visit that displayed other campers' personal websites. The websites would obviously first have to be approved by Nintendo to be shown here. You wouldn't get away with putting vile shit at Lake Webaconda. Nintendo doesn't let that slide, and you should know that. I mean, knowing them, Nintendo would probably accuse you of treason, then like set you up for the Salem witch trials on their campground. It's fucking Nintendo shit, bro. I can see them making like a fucking minigame out of it. There were also some simple contests this year, like the Name That Tune contest, where Nintendo staff would slide you an MP3 file, you'd download it, and you'd have to guess where the song's from. There was just a lot of stuff like this, right? You can tell Nintendo was trying to make this more and more memorable every single year. Like, they even tried to do live events. A few days into the event, the map changed, and one of the Nintendo employees' boxers were hung up on the flag. This started a scavenger hunt across the map to find another pair of his boxers that was hidden somewhere else in the map, right? But the best part about this whole thing was that the few people who found it were put into a raffle to win a set of Clay Fighter 63 1/3 boxers. Bro. Clay Fighter undies. This is so gas, man. Have you seen gameplay of this game?
Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Fight!
Get him, baby. There you go.
This was known as one of the best fighting games when it first came out. Bro, they had Earthworm Jim and fucking Booger Man in this game, and you're still gonna try and tell me this game is bad? Just shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it. Today you guys may have Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8, but back then all we had was Clay Fighter and balls. Christmas was coming up and they told us to ask Santa for balls, and fuck, we did. But let's move on, let's go to 1998, where I'm going to talk about pretty much nothing. Which is surprising because I had all that for 97, but that's because I was going off this dude's blog post who attended these few years, right? But for 98, all the info he had was lost, so I can't really do anything about it. I mean, I have the map, and it looks pretty cool and all, but that's the biggest thing I got here. Justin couldn't really help me much either, and I can't really blame him, this was a while ago. But I think this year was Pokemon themed, according to this little section of a Detroit newspaper that was talking about Camp Hyrule for some reason. I don't know, man. I do believe this was the first year where there were Flash games, or at least attempts at Flash games. Justin said he remembers there being some sort of Moogle maze game. He described it as being kinda poorly put together. But that sucks for us cause damn, I wanna see a shitty Moogle maze game. But I can't. Regardless though, let's move on to the next year, 99, and this one's big. Now this is where we actually start getting some detailed info. A surprising amount of this year was preserved online. There's playable archives of the entire map and even some of the minigames, and yes, we now have confirmed minigames. This is the map I've been using as background footage, so I know your ass has already seen it, but now I can finally explain what's really going on here. First thing we got on this map is the Nintendo of America HQ. This was an online chat room that was exclusive to all the Nintendo employees helping with camp. Right next to it was the first aid hut. This was where you'd go if you needed technical support with something. But probably the place you'd spend the most time at was the bonfire. This was the camp's general discussion chat room. You'd make friends with randoms and talk about different Nintendo shit. You get the idea. And I've thrown around the word chat room a lot, and it seems super simple in concept and easy to ignore, but this was probably one of the most fun things about Camp Hyrule. Because if you chose to go to Camp Hyrule of all things, I know your ass fucking loves Nintendo. So being able to make friends with people who love the same things you do, and getting the chance to become closer with the actual employees of the company you love must have been super memorable for a lot of people. There were other chat rooms too, like the mess hall, another general discussion chat. The only difference with this one is that you can also be fed virtual food, which, fuck it, sure man. This is where the campers would have their virtual lunchtime, I guess. There was a variety of different unique food served as well, like mystery meat, Moogle burgers, and Yoshi ribs. Good lord. Alright, man. There were also, of course, specific chat rooms meant for you and your fellow cabin mates to strategize, as well as a special event chat room where Nintendo staff would hold all the games we talked about. The final main location we got here was the trading post. This is where all the updates and announcements were. Great. The announcements were usually for upcoming contests, but sometimes it was for other random stuff, it kinda depends. But despite all the chat rooms and community interaction, this year of Camp Hyrule was surprisingly controversial. Most of the campers were unable to access the chat rooms because of the invalid login error. Text saying invalid login would show up when people tried accessing the chats. It took some people literal days to even get in. It was such a problem that one of the cabins deadass named themselves the Invalid Logins. That, as well as the contests not having super good variety this year, made this one of the weaker Camp Hyrules thus far. But maybe they made up for it with the Flash games. Let's take a look at them. Donkey Kong. One of the best games that Nintendo has ever conceived. In this game, these doors randomly open and either a Kremling or a Kong will pop out. You want to hit as many Kremlings as possible and avoid hitting the Kongs. The better you do, the bigger the score you'll get. And that's it. It was a very simple game, but Pong was also a very simple game, and that one was really huge back then. The other game available was Kremling Crunch. In this game, there are holes in the wall, and either a Kremling or a Kong will pop out. You want to hit as many Kongs as possible while trying to avoid hitting the Kremlings. The game is overall very simple, but Tetris was also a very simple game, and that one was pretty huge back then. There was also a third game, that one being called Robo Dog. But I don't think this one is online anywhere and I wasn't able to find it, so that one's a mystery, I guess. There's a lot more locations on this map, as you can see, but none of them were games. They were literally just other chat rooms. Some of them were themed around upcoming games, but that's it. There was nothing special to them beyond that. But I did want to specifically mention Mario Golf, because there's actually a Camp Hyrule secret in the North American version of Mario Golf. If you pick Donkey Kong as your character and then go to the code entry screen to enter this code, you'd be entered into the Camp Hyrule Cup. All it is a simple tournament. You just play it out to try to get the best score possible. But it's interesting as hell that this is in the game. They built this shit into the cartridge. It was put into the game to be used for Camp Hyrule contests. You do the tournament and then submit your score to the website, then you'd get points for your cabin based on your score. There was apparently prizes given out for top scores as well. Justin won a Mario Golf promotional golf ball that came with Nintendo tees. Thought that was kinda cool. The cup is only in the North American version and it didn't appear in any virtual console re-release of the game, but if you wanted to play this cup today, you totally can. You just need an N64 and a North American version of Mario Golf. But that's pretty much it for this year of Camp Hyrule. There was an awards ceremony giving some of the campers awards, and it was announced that Cabin 16 Sages of Hyrule won. Not to be confused with Cabin 6 Sages of Hyrule, very creative names we had this year. Every member of Cabin 16 received a Camp Hyrule 99 poster signed by all the Nintendo staff that helped run the event. Camp Hyrule 2000 is very interesting. This is where we kind of enter a new era for the site in my opinion. Clearly there's been a huge focus on chatting in Camp Hyrule. You can argue that that's 80% of the entire damn experience, and that the map is just there for flavor. But I mean, it makes sense. Camp Hyrule literally originates from AOL chat rooms. Even when they moved off of AOL, the site then became a forum called The Loud House. So, you know, just more talking. But starting with this year, they really tried to make Camp Hyrule its own thing. They wanted to make it feel like a huge event. Not only are they now advertising it in Nintendo Power, but they're even now claiming that this is their biggest online event of the entire year. They still had a cap for how many people could join, but there was a lot more space now. So what did this year have to offer? Well, honestly, a lot of the same stuff, but just better. A better looking updated map, better chat games, no dumbass invalid login error. People had a blast this year, man. I mean, from the start, it was already looking good. The year started off with a virtual bus ride to the campgrounds. On this bus ride, all the campers were challenged with a little trivia game. The winner of trivia was awarded with a signed copy of Majora's Mask. So this year's already gas as hell is what I'm saying. They're doing cool stuff before like camp has even started. But of course there was fun things to do at camp as well. The Mario Golf tournament returned, face paintings, as well as new stuff like Professor Oak's challenge. It was a daily event where you'd find a Pokemon and then do some sort of puzzle that was related to the Pokemon you found. There was also Professor Elm's challenge, and this one you just find the other hidden Pokemon that you may have missed across camp. So now they're trying to make more use of the map, hiding secrets and putting games into the hub itself. It's so insanely cool, dude. They offered other random stuff too, like guessing what the blurred Nintendo character is. Here's the exact blurred image they used this year if you wanted to go ahead and attempt it. Maybe you're a Nintendo professional. There were a couple more contests as well, but I'm not really sure how all of them worked. Here they all are regardless though, if you care. And to actually talk about the map, yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff from last year, but there's a couple new stuff too. Like we got Majora's Mask lands now, Mario Tennis Land, Yoshi's Rib Den is now owned by Kirby. There's some cool stuff in here. But it seems they removed all the Flash games except for the Fishtails one, which kinda blows, but it's not like it's a deal breaker or anything. It really is just an updated version of the last map, but at the same time that's not really a bad thing, it's just something to note I guess, right? But this year's map was the first to introduce little Camp Hyrule storylines. After each day the moon would appear slightly bigger to the point where half the screen was the fucking moon. Then of course after a while the camp gets destroyed by the moon. I think it's super sick that they actually have the map destroyed and still kind of playable. They didn't need to put this much detail into this whole thing, but they did, which shows they really did care for this event at this point. Smash Ultimate even ended up referencing this little Camp Hyrule event with the Moon Assist trophy. Everyone had a lot of fun this year, and that's pretty obvious from everything I've said. This was a great year. Cabin 3, Majora's Cabin of Time, would end up winning. They all received a Cabin Hyrule 2K signed poster. They deserved it. There was a lot of tough competition this year. Like Cabin 20, I heard there was a whole scandal where they were doing immaculate amount of coke, so they were doing really good at the games. Okay, 2001. This is a big year for Nintendo because this is the year their new console, the Cube, came out. So of course 2001 Camp Hyrule advertises the GameCube a lot. New map with this kind of rough polygonal look and then just a big ass GameCube on top of it. This is our new map, right? Luigi's Mansion, Smash Brothers, Pokemon, the locations we have here are pretty interesting I think. Despite that though, this seems like yet another weak year for Camp Hyrule. Similar to 99, there were issues, this time with registering for camp. Several issues of the site just straight up crashing. It took people quite a while to even get fully registered for the event. But when it did start, everyone who was able to sign up had no issues getting into camp. But the issues even existing to begin with kind of gave a bad first impression for this year already. They tried to make up for it by doing another bus ride trivia contest, this time for a copy of Advanced Wars. But you know, those issues still pissed off people just a little bit. Unlike the past 2 years, the map of this isn't fully archived. And to be honest, a lot of the years we have left don't have full archives. But that's honestly okay, because this year has a lot of community elements preserved that we can talk about. One really cool thing I haven't got to mention as much as I'd like is the creativity and freedom allowed by Nintendo in these events. Sure, I've mentioned how each cabin has their own names, and I've even randomly showed flags, but it gets even cooler than that with the cabin customization. Not only could you come up with your own mascot, name, and flag for your cabin, but you could even design like an actual interior for it. Every member of your cabin would make their own versions of everything and then everyone would vote on which they would want to keep. It would allow every cabin to really have their own identity. It's such a fucking cool concept to me. This is also the first year where we get our first official Camp Hyrule mascot. His name is Stumpy. Last year there was this ranch area that had a bunch of horses. In one of the chats someone kept saying that the horse looked stumpy to the point where everyone was saying it. And Nintendo thought this little gag was funny too I guess, so they brought him back, but now as the mascot officially being named Stumpy the Horse. Let's talk about this year's storyline though. This time the GameCube is almost done, it's coming out soon, but the blueprints for the GameCube have gone missing for some reason. So it's the goal of every camper to beat these fun little flash games to recover the blueprints and save the GameCube's release. I wish I had archives of some of these flash games, man. You have no idea. There were cool Pikmin and Luigi's Mansion minigames. They even had this one where you got to throw hands with Bowser. And me, I've been wanting to box Bowser for a while, so I was a little disappointed that I wasn't able to play this one. But eventually all the blueprints were recovered, and it was found out that the person who stole the blueprints was that asshole Wario. Wario was obviously not happy about the campers saving the GameCube, so he then convinces Bowser to go destroy their entire campgrounds, resulting in the end of camp. There weren't too many competitions this year either, honestly, which is why I kind of skipped over them. Like what, they had poetry competitions, I guess? Okay, cool. Make up a Camp Hyrule poem and submit it. Here's a Camp Hyrule poem. These contests were kind of whatever, you know what I mean? I feel like they prioritized the little flash game blueprint gimmick over the contests, but that's just my opinion. But I mean, if you really want me to be fun, here's a second chance to guess the blurred Nintendo character for the year. If you got that one right, you might need to go pro in Camp Hyrule guessing games. I don't think anyone else but you got that. Cabin 9 Fight Cube won, and they all won a poster, as you could probably guess by now. This year's reception was just okay. The games were nothing super special this year really, although nothing bad. That being paired with the weird vibe given from the registration issues just kind of gave this year a pass, nothing more, nothing less. Now literally less than a month before Camp Hyrule 2002 started, Super Mario Sunshine dropped, so you know damn well we're getting a Sunshine map. I was kind of hoping for a map based off Cubivore, thought that would have been pretty fire, that's one of my favorite games, but Mario Sunshine is an amazing choice too. As you can see, the map is literally covered in feces, so the campers were tasked with slowly cleaning up the map and restoring it to its original vision. There were flash games inspired by Metroid Prime and the Wind Waker, and completing these would help make the island less dirty. Nintendo was trying their best to fix the technical side of Camp Hyrule 2, straight up removing the registration cap for Camp Hyrule so that signups wouldn't crash again. This not only fixed the issue of the website crashing, but it also let a lot more people participate in these events. After the camp was eventually cleaned, it was revealed that Shadow Mario was responsible for putting dirt all over the campgrounds. But there was then another plot twist. Shadow Mario was actually just one of the camp counselors, so a Nintendo employee was sentenced to virtual camp jail for the rest of their life for making Camp Hyrule dirty, which was a very emotional moment for everyone at camp that day. Very fun stuff, right? That's about all I got. It's overall just really similar to 2001. It's pretty much just a new theme and story, which I don't think is a bad thing. I still say all of these events have been unique and memorable in their own ways. But most of the people who went to old Camp Hyrules are no longer attending. Whether it be they don't think the events are as fun or they're just too busy, obviously depends on the person. But because of that, I don't have blog posts posted by old campers or anything to give me that direct view into Camp Hyrule as much anymore. Which means these upcoming years are nowhere near as detailed as the ones we've been seeing. We really are in a new age of Camp Hyrule. Different people are coming to these events now, but in the end, that's okay. It's still a massive community full of people excited to attend every year. Cabin 5 would win, but I honestly don't even know what the cabin was named. That shit might just be Cabin 5 if we're listening to Google. I also don't know what they won, but I assume it was probably a poster. I'm sorry, man, I know I'm kind of busting your balls a little bit at this point, but here, have one last guessing game to cheer you up. Maybe that will make you feel at least a little better. 2003. Now the GameCube has been out for a little bit. We got some new games to advertise. You know the deal by this point. We got some bangers this year. WarioWare, Pokemon Ruby, Double Dash, F-Zero, 1080 Avalanche. There's a lot of stuff here. There were some Flash games too. The only thing I have full footage of is this shitty snowboarding minigame from earlier. I sucked ass at this one at first, but then I figured out you really just have to press the spacebar at this one moment and then you always win. So I'm actually globally ranked in this game now. But they wanted to do something different this year. It was kind of interesting. We obviously know there's a bunch of cabins competing for points to get a prize at the end. But this year they did this thing where they took all the cabins and then split them into two different teams. A Mario Kart team and an F-Zero team. Because of this, each cabin was given a character to help represent their team more. For example, Cabin 2 was given Donkey Kong and Toad, while Cabin 6 was given QQQ. But this didn't actually fully take away from the cabin customization thing. You were still allowed to have your own cabin name, flag, and even your own mascot. Like this cabin's mascot was just some dude's dog. These cabins would obviously have contests to compete in just like every other year. Some of the contests were the same, some were new, but the new ones were really nothing special, just new things to do. The highlight contest-wise was probably the return of Mario Golf tournaments, this time with the sequel Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. It's pretty much just the same as the N64 tournament, just on the newer game. But it honestly doesn't need anything else. This was one of the coolest things Camp Hyrule has done, so bringing it back was a no-brainer, I think. But I think my favorite thing I found out about this year were the secret chat rooms it had. If you went to the Final Fantasy library and solved a puzzle, you'd get access to a secret part of the map with secret chat rooms. We haven't had anything like this before, and it's a cool little Easter egg, honestly. I really like this stuff, it's just neat. But it's about that time. Let's get into our yearly camp storyline. Every day, there would be a random part of the camp that would get ruined. The camp staff would work hard to fix it, and by the time it was fixed, another part of the camp would get ruined. All of this was happening while Metroids were haunting random places at camp. So you think, I don't know, Ridley's behind this or something? But actually no, the Metroids aren't related to anything. The villain this year is King K. Rool, and he's been messing with the campgrounds, destroying random shit. And that's pretty accurate to his character, I think. He ends up releasing a massive earthquake that destroys the entire map, and one lucky person was given a King K. Rool piñata as a prize, and What a fucking specific prize, but sure. I mean, it looks like King K. Rool, I guess. That's the biggest compliment I can give this thing. If you told me Cabin 20 from that other year made this, I'd believe you. But that was about it for 2003. A very different year for sure, but still very memorable, I'd say. But now, let's move on to 2004, the year of the Nintendo DS. In this map, we got this massive DS factory, massive DK bongos, and other stuff, I guess. It's a really cute map. In this one, the solar panels on the big DS factory get messed up and now we gotta fix it. If we're not able to fix it in time, then Nintendo won't be able to give away 5 DSs to 5 lucky winners at the end of this Camp Hyrule, which is a fucking tragedy. So we have to act quick and fix it. Doing the usual stuff, of course, puzzle based on Pikmin 2 and a Donkey Konga minigame, which confused me a lot. This was one of the few games I was able to play myself and it's just so weird. It's just Simon Says, but the controls are so fucking corny for no reason. Look at this shit. This is the spacebar, this is D, and this is K. It just seemed really weird for no reason. Like, I get it, Donkey Kong, of course I get it, but it just seemed so forced in. It doesn't feel natural. But maybe I'm the fake DK fan for not adjusting to it because I don't play all my games binded to the keys DK. So I really can't blame that on the game, I just need to get better. There was this other game too, Hyrule Archery. This one was something for sure. You'd have to aim your arrow to hit one of these targets in the distance, but the wind speed changes every attempt, so you have to kind of adapt to the wind speed to try to hit the target you want. I have no comment on this game, honestly, just wasn't for me. But with those two games, you kind of already get what this year had to offer Flash game-wise. Another thing this year had was this weird event where NOA Mike lost his Pokemon and they started running around in the campgrounds, which seems really familiar actually. Apparently the person responsible for this was NOA Sean. He released Mike's Pokemon, and for this you got to choose his punishment. Now I don't know what punishments this entailed, but I kinda like not knowing. It makes it 10 times more hilarious for me this way. The camp would end up flooding this year and I actually don't know why. It's not like Yoshi did this or something, or any other character. The camp just randomly flooded, but it was all good in the end because they decided to host a Q&A with Reggie right after, which instantly cheered everyone up. Cabin won, N Forces would win. 2005 is probably the most unique looking map we've seen up until this point. Instead of like an interactive hub, it's literally an actual map, and I kind of dig it actually. It's something new. This entire style was heavily inspired by Nintendo's new game coming out, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. But one complaint you may have about the map is that it's just not colorful. It's missing some of the Camp Hyrule charm. Well, don't worry, there were a lot of different Flash games this year, and by getting high scores in these games, you would get Stumpy Stones. These stones would give color to the map until it eventually looked like this. And I think it just looks so cool when it's fully colored. Like, actually, dude, it looks so good. I think I actually played all of the Flash games that were available this year, if not most of them. And they're kinda what you'd expect, nothing crazy really. I'll show a few of the ones I personally fucked with. First up, there's this one based on Mario Superstar Baseball. You hit the ball onto the barrels and they break and you get points. Big fan of this game's sound design. Then there was this Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness matching game. Not gonna lie to you, it's just a matching game. Nothing special about it, but I still had fun playing it. And the last one I care to talk about is the Nintendogs Scramble game, where they switch this bone around and you have to click the bowl that has the bone in it. Now this game was actually ass, but every time you win, a PNG of a dog pops up and tells you how great you are, and that really stuck with me for some reason, so it made it. But that's really all I care to talk about for the Flash games this year. The rest you could explain in like a sentence each. And the contests for this year were what you'd expect: a Camp Hyrule parody song, a DK King of Swing art project, designing a faceplate for a Game Boy Micro, and a crossword puzzle. But story time, what ends up happening to the camp this year, those creeps from Zelda, the Moblins, ended up burning the entire camp down. A fun little Zelda way to end our Twilight Princess themed map. But the funniest part to me is, this game actually ended up getting delayed while camp was happening. They had to announce it was getting delayed while they were already having an online summer camp based around it. That's just such a big fucking middle finger to anyone who was excited for that game. I think it's really funny. It's not really a big deal anyway. They just had to wait like a year and a half or something. It just is what it is. Cabin 9, the K9 Kennel would win, and everyone from the cabin would earn themselves Stumpy t-shirts. And this is a flex to own. Imagine owning an official t-shirt of Stumpy, the Camp Hyrule horse mascot. That's just beyond gas, really. But finally, we're here, man. the final year 2006. The Nintendo Wii was dropping this year, so they wanted to push it with Camp Hyrule, and also, yeah, now we're in space. We got some Mario Galaxy inspiration here. Everything is space themed. Instead of all the locations being on one planet, they made multiple planets to house some of these important locations. My favorite is 100% the Mario Hoops 3-on-3 planet, officially named the Mario Hoops Baskosphere. They had some Flash games, of course. I wasn't really a fan of any of them, but they exist and they're space themed. You'd either be shooting asteroids or like saving Stumpy in these, or maybe randomly the viruses from Dr. Mario would show up, cause yeah, sure man. One lucky camper would win a free Nintendo Wii. That was the prize for this year. Not as cool as something like the K-Roll Pinata, but the thought is what counts. The camp would get sucked up by a wormhole which transported everyone into the 1998 map. And the final cabin to win would be Cabin 9, the cabin at the end of the universe. Camp Hyrule from start to finish was Nintendo's biggest online tradition. It was amazing. Some years were weaker than others, sure, but no year was actually bad. Every year was memorable and fun. Making friends, playing dumb little games, being able to become closer to the company you looked up to, all of these things is what made Camp Hyrule Camp Hyrule. This is one of the coolest things Nintendo has ever done. So many memories were made with Camp Hyrule, but it had to end eventually. I was actually lying when I said the last Camp Hyrule was in 2006. There was actually one more in 2007, but it just wasn't the same. The community elements were ripped away. Everything that made Camp Hyrule fun was pretty much non-existent here. The only thing you could do was submit and share your favorite memories from past Camp Hyrules. So this year's only real purpose was to remember how great Camp Hyrule was. It wasn't a real Camp Hyrule. But as a final thank you from Nintendo, everyone that showed up was put into a raffle to win a life-sized Link statue. But then, the doors closed. The forums that hosted Camp Hyrule from beginning to end shut down. And because the forums had to shut down, Camp Hyrule also had to end. Today, if you try to visit camphyrule.com, you just get redirected to Nintendo's website. It's really over. Camp Hyrule ending broke a lot of people's hearts. A lot of people really loved this event, and many people still miss it. It really felt like home to a lot of gamers online. It was a place where everyone loved Nintendo, and the whole point was to just have fun talking about something you love. Simple stuff like that can shape people. I truly believe Nintendo changed lives with this dumbass summer camp. It left a mark on a lot of people. Fans have even tried to revive it. There was Camp Hyrule 2013, a fan version hosted exclusively through Tumblr, doing the same stuff, face paintings, talking about Nintendo, just genuinely enjoying each other's time. They even watched this fire movie that I just needed to mention. It's a Japanese movie about a 30-year-old man who has to exclusively play Donkey Kong Country until he beats it. And this shit is just so fire, you have to watch this. But that's the story of Camp Hyrule. It's such an interesting part of Nintendo's history, and I'm glad I was able to tell you about it. I wanted to end this video with this quote from Justin. This month marks the 20th anniversary of Camp Hyrule. While there is much more to the Camp Hyrule story than I mentioned here, I have to say that it's a tradition I truly miss. As someone who was a camper since the event started, I can honestly say it did shape who I am and gave me some positive role models when I was younger. Camp Hyrule was more than a marketing initiative. It was a special event that brought people together to have some good online fun. There wasn't anything else like it anywhere. For me, August will never be the same without Camp Hyrule.
I've talked about Camp Hyrule for so long now, but it kicked a lot of ass, and I can't simply pass it off as saying, oh, it's just an online event hosted by Nintendo's official Insider forums. No, it was the online event. Really cool stuff. Really, really cool.